Sure. I would like to call this meeting of the Pemberton Valley Utilities and Service Committee to order. And I would like to begin by recognizing that we are meeting on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lillooet Nation. And in attendance are Director Kennett and Director Mack in person, as well as myself, and Director Richmond is not in attendance today. So the first item moving to the second item on the agenda is the approval of agenda. Okay, passed. And then there's no closed meeting, so no rise was report for the closed meeting. So moving on to item 5, the delegations. So we'll start at 5.1. Martin, if you'd like to come to the table, or yes. If you'd like to come to the table, and we have 10 minutes allocated for presentation and 5 minutes.
Just sit right here.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm current president and one of the SAR managers with Pemberton Search and Rescue. So, hello. And yeah, I guess we'll just talk about what we've been doing in the last year. And currently, we have about 47 members on our team now. We've had another 20 that we've added in the last year, with 10 of those being for the Lillooet area. And we're pretty much business as usual. We have our training every week and bi-weekly for a variety of courses and certifications. We keep up with the base and day-to-day operations, and we have our repairs and vehicle maintenance, base maintenance and gear maintenance. We have a variety of internal committees and specialty groups. And everybody's spending a lot of time just to support the operation these days. They're not just out doing rescues. A lot of people don't think about that. There's a big operation to do support that, and it's all in volunteer time. With fundraising lately, we've been doing like a lot of the local mountain bike events for the community, the Spud Crusher and the Enduro, those kind of things, providing extrication support for those events. We're going to be doing the Whistler Blackcomb Foundation again for their fundraising event for their coat check. And then we usually do the slow food cycle as well in the summertime there. For our tasks, callouts have been after a very busy year in 2022, which I think was a record year for us. We were down this past year a little bit. And I think that was probably a big result of the forest fire season in the area. And then we had a low snowpack last year. And we've had a slow start to the winter this year. I think we all know that. And so that's just impacted people getting out and about kind of thing. About 75% of our calls are for rescues of injured people and medical events. We do very few searches. It seems to be a shift these days. It's a lot of rescue type stuff. And what we're seeing is actually an increase in a lot of people in the backcountry that are unprepared. We think that's a big result of the current social media thing these days. People see it on Instagram and they think it's something easy, and then they go out and try it, and then they realize it's not as easy as they saw it on TV there or on their social media feed. The rest of our sort of tasking usually comes from the missing people, evacuations. We dealt with the forest fire situation in Seton Portage last year, this past summer. We do some water rescues. We do some Class D fixed line helicopter operations, which unfortunately we still have to rely on Whistler SAR to get their kit into our area. And we've had an increase in our technical rescues, we've noticed. And so that is still an issue for us, that the government will not approve us to have our own kit. And so we've had some time challenges, I'll say, with end of day rescues, having to wait a little bit extra time, but that's a thing that we're still working on, but I'm not sure if we'll see a resolution to that anytime soon. We do train with Whistler, and we also have a mix of recreational vehicle accidents. We actually had several calls this year for vehicles stuck up in the Mud Lakes area, getting people just not knowing where they're going, and then they get up there and they get stuck in Mud Lakes. And then as well as we provide mutual assistance to a variety of other SAR teams up and down the Sea to Sky corridor when the task, like the recent search for the missing fella in Whistler this past fall. For income this year, we obviously have the SLRD requisition for operating costs. We get reimbursements for our tasking expenses from the provincial government. Then we have our donations and fundraising events. And as I'm sure everyone knows, we do get funding from the provincial government for our capital costs. We can't use that money for operating costs. So that's geared towards specific items like getting equipment for the members and that kind of thing. And then allowing us to do upgrades to our base. So like an example, this year we cleared a bunch of hazard trees because we had new members. We expanded our parking, and then we've just did some general brush cutting and trying to clean the place up. For this past year, we've had a mix of expenditures. We've had to replace a bunch of our aging avalanche transceivers, helmets and new PPE for our new members, which at $300 example for just a helmet. Outfitting a new member is, I figure, roughly on the order of about $3,000 per member to get them outfitted for their gear. We've got to buy some additional radios along for that to supply for the additional members. Having had a theft at our base of a trailer previous year, we've had to upgrade our security with cameras and that kind of thing, which we actually managed. We got a call from the RCMP. They actually found our trailer down in Fraser Valley. But yeah, that was kind of nice. Basically, you got somebody had on their farm lot, had a whole bunch of stolen stuff. And then we just have our ongoing training for helicopter rescue and our rope rescue and all the certifications that everybody has to do. There's a lot of annual recurrency training with that. And so there's training and travel costs associated with all that. We now have about 10 members in the Lillooet area on the base there. And that gives us additional support for coverage out in that area, especially if we can't get to say the South Chilcotins, where a lot of people recreate up there. One of the issues we've been having lately as a side effect again of the forest fire situation is that it's very hard to get a helicopter for rescues. We've at times had to wait for an hour or two before we can even get a helicopter. And with our tenure, which is huge because we go from here to Cache Creek, South Chilcotins, out towards Toba Inlet and down to Slow-Cat. So that's a lot of area that's not really a drivable terrain. So in a timely fashion to get a rescue. Other than that, we've tried to get to look at funding for the Lillooet area from other SLRD areas, but we haven't had much success in just the money that's available in those smaller areas. So we're working on that, but so far not much success in that. With respect to coming up to 2024, which is going to be sort of business as usual with day-to-day operations, we'll be continuing with our ongoing training with all the mountain rescue, helicopter operations, crevasse rescue, and that sort of stuff. We have a jet boat and other boats, so we have to keep up a lot of training on. So there's a lot of recurrent training that we have to do to keep up everybody's skills with all this stuff. We'll be looking at again, just continuing to complete the outfitting of our new members with their uniforms and PPP. And then we'll be getting ready to prepare our funding report for the upcoming year. And then we're also dealing, I'm sure people are aware, there's a bit of a brouhaha with the new EDMA legislation regarding that kind of stuff. So we're have some issues we're trying to work through with that as well. And that's all I have. But thank you for your time and your continued support. And yeah, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, obviously. Hey, when you, excuse me, when you get the new recruits coming in, all their PPE and all that stuff, do you have to fundraise to provide that for them, or do you get funding from the province to buy that equipment?
We for that provincial funding every year, we have to make a proposal. So we do a report on the last year's funding, and then we submit that. And then along with that, we submit a proposal or a plan, I should say, for the following year. And that will change every year. So if we need some PPE, like that was in this year's report or plan, and but that'll change every year. Like next year, there might be no request, or there will not be anything submitted for.
But there is funding available, provincial funding.
We get a lump sum, and then we tell them where we plan on spending it.
Yeah, okay.
So this year, part of that was to get some PPE. Yes.
Right. Oh, very good. And like I say, thank you guys so much. I mean, it's amazing how much time and effort you put in. And yeah, it's just invaluable.
I just have a question. When you were saying that there is a special kit that you've been borrowing from Whistler, how much money is that involved, like for you guys to get your own?
If we were to buy that now, it depends. There's a couple of different kits, but the one that Whistler's using, that is about $40,000. There's a kit that North Shore SAR uses, called a boost system, and that is on the order of 120,000. So they're not cheap, and there's pros and cons that I won't get into here, but to the different types of systems. But the one we would be looking at would be like $40,000 probably.
Right.
So just on that, you sort of mentioned there's an issue with the province. They won't give you a certification or something to that effect?
EMCR is the body that decides what capabilities a SAR team is allowed to have. Different SAR teams don't necessarily have the same capabilities. So an example would be that Whistler SAR is not currently recognized and allowed to do swift water rescue. So if there's a call down there, we get called for that. And a team in the interior might not be certified for mountain rescue. Other teams may not be certified for rope rescue. So depending on where the team is and what the calls are like in their area, sort of will dictate what capabilities they have. But currently EMCR has a moratorium on approving new capabilities. That's been in place now for 3 years, I think. So no SAR teams in the province anywhere are allowed to apply for or get granted new capabilities beyond what they currently have at this time.
And like, why is that?
We don't know. It was only ever a verbal statement, and that's one of the issues we have right now is that we don't know. They have said that they are conducting or want to conduct a provincial needs analysis. That was what we were told 3 years ago. To my knowledge, as today, they have not started that yet.
It sounds to me like it's just bureaucratic BS. That I'll say that because it makes no sense whatsoever.
I mean, if anyone's read some of the recent newspaper articles, that's what some of the SAR teams are concerned about, is that they are not allowed to apply for new capabilities and to meet the ongoing and changing and increasing demands. Like the call volume for SAR tasking when I started in the 90s was about provincially 600 to 800 a year. We're now at over 1,800 calls provincially a year. So the call volume's increasing steadily every year.
See, the other thing, like the more training you guys get and the more ability you have, the safer it is for your people doing the job, right? That's the thing. Anyways, bureaucracy drives me wild.
Yeah, it's an issue we're having to deal with on this, but that's a provincial wide thing that the SAR teams are trying to deal with, but
I'll bring this up at our next board meeting. Just
any help we can get
Yeah.
was appreciated, but like I said, there's been no written communication. It was a verbal statement of no, or a moratorium for new capabilities, and
thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you very much for your presentation, and also thank you very much for what you do for this community. You guys are vital.
thank you for your time.
Thanks. Moving on to item 5.2, Natalie Langman from the Pemberton Chamber of Commerce.
Tina Buchan is joining me as well. She's our admin assistant, and she also runs our visitor center. Come up here. Doing that? Okay. All right.
Yeah, and then so we have 5 minutes allocated for the presentation, 5 minutes for questions.
Okay, so let's just run through it. This is our annual report. You can flip through and to the next page. So in it, each year we get 27,500 till 2025. 12,000 is for myself. In the ED role, Tina's role is the admin support from 5,000. The visitor center gets 8,000, and the Regional Economic Development Collaborative admin support gets 2,500 a year. You can flip through. So the next couple pages are some of our project accomplishments for the last year, so you can flip through again. Advocacy is number one for the chamber. We are there for our members, and so a few of the things that we've advocated for this year have been the BC Hydro power outages, the rezoning of Astor, Area C event permitting, funding for the summer staff at the visitor center, and support for early childhood education at the Whistler Learning Center. And then we responded to members' inquiries about the highway closure at Lillooet Lake or Little River Bridge and Suicide Hill. And we were there for our members when there was concerns related to the Casper Creek wildfires and the Joffrey Lake closures. You can flip to the next page. A few of the things that we do at the chamber is we introduce Meet the Members. So it's a monthly interview that is done on our social media, on our website, and it's been response has been great. People love it because they get to have a spotlight shown on them in this community. Flip to the next page. Our DOPS board has been great to address the hiring challenges faced by employers with our by putting on all jobs on our website. It connects businesses with skilled individuals, fostering local economic growth and offering a practical solution to a common challenge. We ran did the 18th annual Rotary Club Pemberton and the Pemberton Chamber 18th annual Pemberton Golf Tournament this year. It's a good fundraiser for both of our organizations. You can flip forward. In 2022, we started offering lifetime memberships for Indigenous owned businesses in the Lower Statliam. And so we've had a few members join from the Lillooet Nation, and we hope that by doing this, we can create an inclusive and welcoming environment where Indigenous people can utilize the benefits of membership and feel encouraged to start their own or expand their current businesses and thrive and feel supported. In the spring, we ran an Indigenous and an intercultural awareness course, and that was through BCIT and the Whistler Learning Institute. We ran it at Tazeel. They do this program in Whistler, but we wanted to bring it to Pemberton for the Pemberton businesses because and to connect the businesses with Tazeel as well, because once you move out of this community, it's more difficult to take this course, and we wanted it on Lillooet Nation land as well. So that was a full sold out course as well. And we ran the 2023 Canada Day Parade, and we coordinated the Canada Day Parade with a specific emphasis on cultural sensitivity, aiming to create a celebration in Pemberton that acknowledges and respects the intricate history between Canada and First Nations people. We recognize two individuals in our communities. We had a big float with Shirley Henry, who was a huge part of this community. And it just read down all the things that she did for our community. And she also was a huge part of the chamber for over 20 years. And she ran the Canada Day Parade for over 20 years as well. So from what I understand. So we had her on one side, and we had Dr. Lorna Williams from the Lillooet Nation on the other side. And we also had Maxine Bruce and Lois Nelson walk through town, lead the parade through town, and they were drumming, they were dressed in their regalia, and we had children come from the Lillooet Nation and Shamakam come ride on our chamber float, and we also had Shirley Henry's granddaughter join us from Kamloops. So this was a really great celebration for us, and it was really important for the community as well. You can flip through. We started running the chamber lunch and learns. So we had two in 2023. We had one with Chief Dean during Truth and Reconciliation Week. And the other one we had with Mayor Mike Richmond in November. And he was joined by Elizabeth Tracy, who presented the village's strategic plan. And we also put a strong emphasis on inviting members from the Lillooet Nation to both events. So we had seats for both events for members from the Lillooet Nation. The first one was attended by, the one with Chief Dean was attended by, and also that was, forgive me, that was also with Rosemary Stager, who is the CEO of the business group. But that one was attended by Lillooet Council, Lands and Resources, and Tizio Learning Center. And the second one, we had 2 active members from the Lillooet Nation who are climate activists, and they contribute to VIDIA. And we also had the members of the secondary school leadership group come. So that was great to have that involvement from youth as well. We ran the Terry Fox Run, raised $9 grand for cancer research, and we collaborated with the Pemberton Valley Supermarket, the PVTA, and the Village of Pemberton to put on this great event for our community. On Truth and Reconciliation Day, we held an event at Stay Wild with one of our members, who is Tanina Williams. And she did a speaking event, and it was attended by members of this community. The feedback was very positive. People were looking for something to do on Truth and Reconciliation Day that had to do with something with local First Nations, Lillooet Nation. They did not want to go to Whistler. They wanted to do something in Pemberton, so we were able to bring that here. Next page. We work with Community Futures to offer free business coaching in this area, and they come to our visitor center, and they can offer this to members of our community. We introduce them to Lillooet Nation as well, so they're working with them, and a member of them also attends our Economic Development Collaborative meeting. So we've involved them in our community as much as we can. And you can flip through. So our Pemberton Visitor Center is, we operate the Visitor Center in the Sandy Dump, and we start in early May and we run to late September. We're open 7 days a week. Tina here is our manager. You can flip through. We refer people to the local gas stations, restaurants, tour operators, shops, farms, to the Learning Center to create revenue for businesses in Pemberton and the Lillooet Nation. Next page, please. There's a lot of things here. You guys, I won't read through it, but it's basically, I put it all in here, so if you ever have a chance, you can skim through it. But our visitor center does a lot for this community, more than most people realize. You know, we refer people to legal campsites. You know, there's picnic area, there's waste disposal for travelers, there's washrooms. You know, we're the gatekeeper for Joffrey Lakes reservations. A lot of times we have a lot of visitors come through, and the counselors that work there will book the people in. If they can't get in, they will refer them to different trails to hike that are adequate for them. We're there for the Joffrey, or not the Joffrey, but we were there for the Joffrey when that closed. You know, we were a resource for when the fires were coming through. We hold meetings there. It's open to public to have meetings there as well. We offer the Sandy Dump and the fresh water and Wi-Fi for travelers. The list goes on. And next page, please. The Sandy Dump, we had less visitors come through the visitor center this year, but we still increased our numbers of usage for the Sandy Dump. So in 2022, there was 985 people that used the Sandy Dump, and then this past summer there was 1,193, so quite an increase. There is no other Sandy Dump from Lillooet to Function Junction except the visitor center, and I think the increase is due to the housing crisis, and people are now living in their RVs and their vans. And so, this is needed, and it's come to our attention that it's actually needed all year round. You know, we can't run it all year round because it's not connected to the sewer system. So, it would be ideal, that it would be connected to the sewer system and that, it would be open all year round for our housing crisis. The land that it's on Lillooet Nation land, and they have plans to build on that area. And we are working with them to learn about the timeline, but we don't have any information on that at the present moment. Besides, perhaps it will close down and they will start decommissioning it in the fall of 2024. So that is coming up. And as everyone knows at this table, I've been very vocal that this will be an issue if it doesn't, you know, if it isn't addressed. And so, something to take into consideration. The next page. We also received funding for the admin for the Pemberton District Economic Development Collaborative Secretary. And this is a group that meets, and it's members of the SLRD, the Village of Pemberton, this Lillooet Nation, Tourism Pemberton, the Lower Statlium, and of course, Community Futures now. So this group meets 4 times a year, and Village of Pemberton Councillor Laura Ramsden has been appointed chair for 2024. Our 2024 work plan is to continue moving forward in strengthening our relationships with our members and members of the Lillooet Nation to grow more Indigenous owned businesses. We've just recently conducted a strategic planning session, and we are in the process of working towards those plans, and I will continue to represent the chamber on regional task forces and committees and all the things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Comments?
My comment is, thanks very much for your hard work. And as a business owner in the valley, I appreciate the chamber and the info booth open. It's integral really to, you know, it's a huge cog in the wheel for our community, and thank you for all your efforts. The question is, how do you feel the ongoing consultation with the Lillooet Nation is going, and with the village and the regional district to find a spot for you to be if it is decommissioned in September? Is there a plan B?
I don't know. I have been very vocal in 2023. I think constantly, at every chance I get, I bring it up that this is going to be decommissioned in the future, and if not this year, it's soon. I have tried to book meetings with the nation, and I should know within 2 weeks more information. They are in meetings supposedly in the next 2 weeks to discuss this further. I don't know if it's a chamber thing specifically for us to try and figure out the future of the visitor center and the sandy dump, because to operate the visitor center and the sandy dump, it's a lot, and it's a lot of, you know, we didn't get, as you know, and some of you know, we didn't get funding for students this past year. We didn't get as much funding as we normally get. We only had it for one, and we had to come to the village and to the SLRD and ask for help to fund the students. If we don't have that funding to fund the students, it's costs us $50,000.
What it costs.
Yeah, $50,000 to run the visitor center annually.
Yeah.
So is it, I, is it up to us to make a plan for it, or is it up to the village, the SLRD, the Lillooet Nation to have a plan in place?
Just my comment on that is that there's no, we're all for funding
Mhm.
your, what, you know, what we need, what you need to have. That's not an issue here at this table at all, I don't think, at
No,
all. We're 100% behind the chamber. It's just, it's difficult, like if you don't have a place to go, it's sort of a lot of unknowns for your organization, and I'm sure the village and the regional district will help you as much as we can to try and solve this. Maybe there needs to be more collaboration and more meetings to try and move it forward.
I'm all about it, and you know, as I would like to say as well, I feel so very supported by the Village of Pemberton and the SLRD when it comes to this topic. You know, when I reach out, I get a response, and I appreciate that. I just don't know, like, there's only so much I can do, and I don't know how it will. I don't know how we can move forward if there is no space for it. And there is, you know, like as Tina says, it's $50,000 to run a year, you know, so is it worth the chamber to continue to try and push this forward and keep it going? Because we don't make any money off of this. It's a lot of work, and I don't know.
I just wanted to get on that I'm not sure if you were aware, but at our last PVUS meeting, that was on November 30th, we did discuss the correspondence that you sent in regarding the Sandy dump, and there was a resolution that was made at that meeting. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. It's in the minutes today, and it's just that it's recommended that the Village of Pemberton staff explore the potential for the Permanent Visitor Center Sani Station to be relocated at the vacant lot south of the Pemberton Valley Lodge, just to explore a discussion with other property owners to see if there is another avenue. So there is some work that's happening. The village had agreed to take that lead at this point, but obviously knowing that we need to do it together. I don't think it's just a Village of Pemberton thing or an SLRD thing. So I think we can continue to have that conversation and try to see how we can support this, you know, this amenity that's really important to this whole region, and to see where it falls. But so there has been some conversation, and hopefully there'll be some solution.
I did watch it on video, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the location that is sort of being looked at, I think it's an excellent location. It's got good highway access, and we did look at that a number of years ago, when the dad that owned the property was alive, and he was supportive of it, or supportive of the idea then. So hopefully, you know, if the same family still owns it. That used to be a card lock. So, and I know they've done remediation work there, took the old tanks out, that kind of stuff, but yeah, I just think it would be an excellent location. If we could somehow negotiate with the owners, you know, to either lease it long-term or something, but anyways, that's a discussion that we need to prioritize and make sure that it moves along.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if there can be maybe some kind of formal meetings between the Chamber and Tourism Pemberton and the village and our board here, separate to try and move forward some solutions.
Absolutely.
And we certainly don't wanna see you guys throw in the towel. I understand it's difficult work. We thank you for all your efforts anyways, and maybe we need to have, I know it's hard when everybody's, meeting out and have got lots of other things to do and businesses to run and everything else, but I think this is so important that we need to try and drive this forward to get some space for you guys and in a timely manner.
So I think that resolution that was made at the last meeting in November, that did set forward a path, right? So the village is working on that. And like I say, the only thing we probably need to do is just make sure that it doesn't get lost, like it is prioritized, and find out whether it's even doable. Because if the owner comes back and says, yeah, we're interested in this, then we can move forward. But that's the first thing we need to know, so.
I think there is some, obviously, you mentioned in the next couple of weeks, you might have some answer. Hopefully we'll get some answer regarding the property owner and whether or not this site could be used. And then, do you guys discuss this at the Economic Development Collaborative? Is this an item? Because there is a lot of representation from multiple groups there. So maybe that's where it can kind of stay alive for now while there's that information gathering, and then something more specific to deal with this issue on its own can sort of be created, so it's not lost.
Well, yeah, that would be great, and please include me in anything that you can, because more people looking at it definitely will help, and definitely I think it's very crucial that the Lillooet Nation is involved in it as well, because that will affect their community and their land as well. So
That was just exactly my next question is, if the Lillooet are planning on say building a building, there could be maybe an opportunity to be a renter there or have a spot there as well, only brand new and better, and maybe they would be interested. I don't know if there has been that kind of application between the chamber and the nation, but that's just wondering.
there has, and they do not want a sandy dump there, and a sandy dump is crucial to this area.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear quite.
They do not want a sandy dump on that land. There's no, they do not want to have a sandy dump on the facility.
No,
So perhaps, maybe, yes, a visitor center potentially, but this is unknown at the moment. But the sandy dump is a definite no.
it's
So
off the table there. Okay.
definitely, 100%.
So then that just makes it that much more important to have the discussion with the other piece, because it's right across the road from the #1 lift station. And you don't have to have a holding tanks or any of that stuff, right?
Yeah. And then if I may ask a question, the other thing that I'm hearing from you potentially is not only is it a question of, the various organizations supporting the chamber, but there's, and this is what I'm asking to just confirm and clarify, is what I'm potentially hearing too, is that there might need to be a larger discussion about who's actually responsible for running the sandy dump and potentially the visitor center as well, because what I'm hearing from you is that this is a massive strain on your resources, and you're maybe not even looking so much for more support, but potentially somebody else to come in and help run it or be responsible for it.
This could be true. I mean, the chamber was ran by Shirley Henry, the volunteer extraordinaire for, I don't know, 20 years. And she was the driver behind the visitor center and the sandy dump. And she she ran that, so that was her project, and with her doing all that, the chamber has sort of just inherited it. And, you know, we did a poll to our members, and is it valuable to them? People don't in this community aren't quite sure if it's valuable to them or not. And, you know, if you could go in there on a Saturday in the summer and people are lined up out the door, you will realize like how valuable it is for this community, you know, and for search and rescue or whatnot, so people aren't getting lost, or when, you know, Joffrey closes unexpectedly, et cetera, right? It is a valuable resource for our community, but is it what our members, business members want? This is unknown, right? So this is a discussion that will have to happen is, you know, should the chamber be running this?
The thing I think that everybody, well, the businesses need to understand, every time somebody stops there to get information or directions or use the sandy dump, they talk, and then they may find out something in the area they want to go and see, businesses, they spend money, they may come back, they tell their friends. So, I mean, it's a huge benefit to the community overall. So I think it's something that we just really have to make sure that we find a spot for.
So just for the sake of time, because we are running a bit behind, and not to diminish this is clearly a very important issue to the community, but I'm wondering is just to keep us moving along here is we've got the resolution from last meeting about the potential conversation. Then I'm wondering, is it enough to start from there and tack on that we need to have a broader level discussion, or should we get a resolution on the table for? Okay.
I think.
Yeah, no,
What I would recommend is potentially if there's new information that you hear from Lillooet, when we have that information back, we reconvene, and then we have the bigger conversation about where should this amenity sit and who should be responsible for it. And I think we also need to have a conversation with the chamber, obviously involved in that. But I think if we can just gather the next bits of information and then have that larger conversation, I think that would be my suggestion. Everyone's good with that.
Yeah. You don't need a resolution for that? No, okay. Okay, any other questions, last comments?
Do you want a motion to that effect?
Well, that's what I was just asking, and
I don't think so. I think that we already have sort of work that's been put in motion, and that conversation will come back once there's information around it.
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Moving on to item 5.3, Christine Raymond with the Pemberton Industry. Oh, no, sorry, Tourism Pemberton, my apologies. And then again, we've got 5 minutes allocated for the presentation and 5 minutes for questions.
Just before I get started, I wanted to say thank you for the nice segue. So obviously we have a very big interest in the visitor center and Sandy Dam, so we definitely want to be involved in the conversation. Yeah. Sorry, I just sneezed. So I'm Christine, I'm the executive director with Tourism Pemberton. I just wanted to bring the two most important point in the time today. So we received funding from the PVUS, so in $20,000 a year. And I think that our main point is that to understand is just that this is obviously to cover a part-time paid position, but it's a big leverage for us because this amount of money that we put in the role and in the conversation, we multiply in big projects. So we have the backcountry outhouses that would be one of our biggest ongoing project right now. That's a $240,000 grant that that the PDIF allows us to have someone in place to manage and obviously lead the logistic of it. And I think with all the location that we've had and this project has started to really expand, and we are building one of the most eco-friendly facilities that we can in the backcountry. And it's also starting to expand in other communities. So I think that is a very great impact that we have. And other big project also in the hundreds of thousands of dollars is our wayfinding project. So it's linked with agritourism. So obviously very representative of Edmonton. And then it started to grow as well. So I think we always take an idea, sort of a small amount of money, and we make it into a very big community project. And a lot of other organizations came into the wayfinding, and we were able to do all the panels. I don't know if you can flip to the third slide, I want to say, fourth. Yeah, so we just had our science of seed potatoes and journey through ecosystem panels that are just so beautiful, and there was a lot of people involved in it, and a little pride here. And then we also redid the map at the visitor center and other really great project that just came in because we had someone in position that could be there and just connect all the dots. It also allowed us to expand on our range beyond range. So that's a circle road that includes Tourism-Lillooet and the Bridge River Valley. And then we promote all the businesses that are in this circle route. And obviously our signature event, so the Slow Food Cycle Sunday. Unfortunately, it was a very dry years with the wildfires. So, but I think that again, having this person in position really helped us pivot risk management, and also have a connection with the community to help understand why these decisions were made. And then maybe also control a little bit of the narrative. And we decided to do a little pop-up event. And it was just really great to see that it was pretty much just resident and locals, and to see that people want to come together and they want to connect and they want to support the businesses, and we had a really great day. So my first point would be leverage. So we take everything that you give us and we do big things with it. And the second point, really important, so we responsible tourism. So I know that sometimes tourism could be associated a little bit with negativity or like bringing too many peoples, but I think that's exactly the reason that we're here. So we take all this information and then we consult with the community, with First Nation, and then we see the best way to manage it. So it's not only about bringing people, but it's also about where are we sending them and what are we telling them, and also how do we educate them so that when they're in nature, they would come anyway, but now they might have a little bit more of an understanding or a specific place to go. And then I think it's really important in that responsibility to mention that it's all tourism is all represented by people that are in the community. So obviously what we bring in is what we bring in our own community. So the people we want to bring into the local businesses, those are our family, neighbors, and our friends. And this is where we go and we live. So the place that we call home, we just want the people that we bring in that they're coming to do and support the thing we feel important.
Anything else?
I think that
Any questions? Comments?
Yeah, thank you for all your hard work in tourism. It's important to the company that I have, and I just was wanting to know, are you doing any kind of liaisoning, or is there funding available from, say, Destination BC or Destination Canada and that sort of thing
I think
that you can access?
Yeah, that's the great thing, because we're a DMO, so a destination management marketing organization. That's the only way to have access to any of the Destination BC grant or fund. And also any kind of like marketing initiative they might have, so they will reach out to us, it will be, okay, there's a journalist or there's a trade show, and then we will reach out to our member and just see, okay, we want the world to know that we have now a skill bike park and a pump track, and then they will go out there and bring it to the right channels. And it also gets, so any, I think that might be also something with the visitor center, so we get access to Destination BC and.
That's great. Yeah, I just think you guys do wonderful work and growing your organization and it's wonderful when I just see all the people in town just taking pictures of Mount Currie and, you know, because of our exposure. And of course, I guess there's always the fine line of being overexposed too, you know, and we walk a delicate line in the Sea to Sky corridor, don't we?
We certainly do.
But thank you for all your work that you do.
We definitely don't do it alone, so thank you for your support and for the chair, of course.
Any other questions, comments? And then I'll just say as well, thank you very much for what you guys do. You guys are an important part of this community, and your work does not go unnoticed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then moving on to item 5.4, we have Erin Campbell from the Pemberton Animal Wellbeing Society. Oh, she's online.
Yep. Hi there.
Hi, Erin. And then just as a reminder, we have 5 minutes allocated for your presentation and then 5 minutes for questions.
Yeah, is there any particular presentation that you're looking for outside of the documents that we submitted? Is that pretty much what I'm going through?
Yes, anything that you would like to highlight out of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're Pemberton Animal Wellbeing Society. We were incorporated into society in 2017. Our funding application was to ensure and secure a sort of permanent figurehead with the organization that would be on call 24/7 to support our organization. We have a part-time paid position with this funding, as highlighted in our first report narrative. And basically what the funding has allowed us to do is continue expanding our services. So we now have an on-call paid member of staff. They have a cell phone where the public can reach us with any queries at any time. Our growing need within Pemberton and beyond has meant that we were able to increase our surrenders and adoptions program. Having the paid position allowed us to do that, in that the shelter manager was available to facilitate these things by organizing the volunteers, communicating with the public, supporting in vetting applications, surrenders, vet records, all of the things that basically keep us going. On top of day-to-day organization of the shelter, which includes maintaining the building, providing the dogs and cats with loving care as well, I suppose. That's pretty much what we have.
Any questions?
I'd just like to say, this is a wonderful group, and it's been in business now for at least 15 or 20 years, I believe.
15 years. We started very grassroots in the beginning, and that's 15 years in process, and then 5 years as an actual incorporated society. And we're in the process again of applying to become a registered charity.
Excellent. No, so anyways, you guys do an amazing job, and whatever we can do to help you keep it going, I certainly favor that. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. No, we're very appreciative of the funding so far. It really has been hugely changing to the organization of the shelter, and being able to have somebody really take charge and get projects off on the go, as well as sort of the day-to-day running of what keeps us going.
I just have a question. How many animals sort of do you have on a daily basis, say overall? How do you?
It fluctuates massively. So at the height of 2023, there was a time when we had 25 animals in our care. I don't know if anyone's been out to the shelter in Pemberton, but we are very small, and we have 2 dog runs plus our outdoor space and then a small cattery. So we do rely heavily on fosters as well to facilitate that number of animals. At the moment, we're fortunate, we've got 3 dogs and 3 cats in our care. But yeah, 25 was the highest at any one time. And overall in 2023, we had 110 surrenders. So 71 cats, 39 dogs came through PAWS in 2023.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your excellent work and helping the animals in the valley. It's important. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a passion project for most of us for sure.
Do you feel like that you are really constrained for space out there, or?
Not so much with our physical space. Like, the space is actually an excellent space where we are out on Airport Road. In terms of our building, that's probably the biggest constraint. We have, I think it was the old weather station trailer once upon a time, before my time. It is small and in need of some upkeep and those kind of things. So that's definitely a very large project. It's part of why we're hoping to become a registered charity, so we can pursue further funding to hopefully one day have better facilities to care for the many animals that come through.
Well, thank you for making us aware of that.
Yeah, that is, yeah, big projects.
Have a look.
Well, thank you very much for all you do for this community. And then unless there's anything else. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Okay. And then moving on to item 5.5, we have Lisa Richardson from the Wellness Almanac. And then again, we've got 5 minutes allocated for the presentation and 5 minutes for questions.
You're so lucky I didn't get my presentation done in time because it was 44 slides and counting, and I didn't make the deadline. I'm like, oh, I could actually just speak to it and might actually come into the 5-minute time frame. But I wish I'd been here earlier because it's so inspiring to hear. Wow, it's inspiring to hear what everybody's up to and all the community organizations that are doing such good work. The Wellness Almanac had been running for 12 years. In 2020, we were brought, brought with bridging funding under the PDIF. And then we have just completed a 3-year cycle of long-term funding for 2021, 22, 23. So thank you. I'm here to kind of report out and say thank you for that support. I haven't applied for funding. It's, again, moving forward. A big part of that reason is that the process, well, Lillooet Nation has been a third member of funding this an equal component since the start of the Wellness Almanac in 2012. And this process doesn't allow them any kind of decision-making role, or input or consideration, or way of sort of saying, well, through the lens of Lillooet, is the Wellness Almanac a useful thing? Is it serving the community? Is it helping kind of drive reconciliation from their perspective? So what's basically happened is, I've worked with the PDIF process, received the funding, had an obligation to secure matching funding, gone to Lillooet and said, well, is it you? I'm like, that might be mine. You should be at a meeting now. Gone to them and said, hey, will you provide your third? And they're kind of hamstrung in a way to be like, well, we've been third party to this, but we don't really get to have a meaningful say in the process of it. And so it feels like that the process aspect of it doesn't really feel like it's meeting the Nukuntual ideal of together we're helping each other find a way. And so I think moving forward in terms of some kind of a community collaborative offering, it sort of needs to work through a different process. This doesn't feel like the appropriate process. Yeah, okay, that's sort of part of the piece there. To report out on the funding for this year. You guys supported us with $12,000. Lillooet matched that with $6,000. My kind of concession to them not really having had a chance to be at the table in terms of like even hearing a presentation or like receiving a report of what, you know, like what the intentions are or what the numbers are, is to say, I will do my very best to commit that portion of funding to supporting Indigenous content creators or Indigenous kind of like centering initiatives. And so over the past 3 years, that's involved hiring a Lillooet co-editor and contributor, Amanda Ritchie, like a couple of years ago. Last year it was hiring a poet in residence, Lois Fay from Quatqua, and paying her to contribute her poetry in the space. This year it was more an event-focused contribution, so we partnered with the Chamber or helped sponsor the Truth and Reconciliation Day luncheon that Chief Dean Nelson and Rosemary Stages spoke at. So we sponsored a table and helped invite Lillooet Nation members to be there. So that was sort of like a way of supporting that. We partnered with the Chamber on an initiative that they established with Stay Wild to host Tanina Williams from Lillooet Nation to come and do a storytelling event for Truth and Reconciliation Day. We supported the Chamber again because Natalie has been such a champion, like she personally has been such a champion for reconciliation initiatives in this community. And to have some resources at my disposal that I could kind of move towards that to say, yeah, I really want to lift these kind of things up, is some of the flexibility that I had, because the Wellness Almanac doesn't have a membership base to answer to. Like there's some liberty in terms of what I'm able to do because of like the weird unofficial status that the Wellness Almanac has, which has been great and flexible and allowed for a lot of things. And also I feel like it's time now for that to be formalized. Like there needs to be a little bit more oversight. There needs to be more people at the table. Like it doesn't feel responsible for it to continue to be kind of this like random one-woman show, you know, as fun as it's been for me. So we were able to support the Canada Day parade and provide gifts for Lois and Maxine, who were leading the parade, and provide a prize for the float that kind of best exemplified the theme that was put forward of like weaving our communities together. And it's kind of like, I feel, I guess, proud in a way of like having stood with the Chamber on that initiative, because I think it's a really brave thing in this day and age to say, actually, we are going to have a Canada Day parade, when a lot of other communities are cancelling it, just saying, we'd rather not touch it. It's too hard. It's too sticky. We're not gonna, like Vancouver canceled their Canada Day parade. Whistler did as well, just because of sensitivity around that reconciliation. It felt like such a beautiful and bold move to say, actually, we're going to do it here, and we're going to try and move the conversation in a direction. We're going to try and make it about building relationship and working out how we move forward. So I feel really proud of our little community for doing that, and grateful that we live in a place where we kind of have to grapple with it. Like I feel like Whistler has like a degree of insulation where they're like, oh, we could kind of avoid it. Like nobody's going to notice quite as much. It's maybe more about optics. Is it on the record? Maybe we should take that off. But here it's sort of like, it's more personal. You know, like our kids are in school together. You know, like we're sitting in the clinic waiting room together. Like it's a deeply relational thing. And I think that is an opportunity for us to lean into. And yeah, I want to give Natalie a shout out for the way she has leaned into that and kind of brought so many of us along. So it's been a real honor to have been able to allocate some funding and also just some like promotional support to those kind of things. We were also successful in securing a grant of $8,900 from the Whistler Blackcoat Foundation. And this project will actually roll out this year. We'll partner with the library and roll out a kind of a book club rumbling towards reconciliation conversation circle series. But the idea is that we want to really collaborate with some members of the Lillooet Nation or Quatqua Nation. And because book club feels to me like a very like middle-aged white woman thing. Like I love it, but I'm a bit of a cliche. So rather than doing that, we sort of want to work with the folk from the nation and Quatqua to be like, if you could get a bunch of people reading something or discussing something, what would you want them to read? You know, like what would that conversation look like and sound like, and what would entice you to engage? Are there ways that we can actually come together in conversation and have hard conversations with some kind of parameters in place that we're not harming each other. We're not kind of like hurting each other by trying to have those conversations. So that's sort of the hope for this year to explore. Part of, I guess part of the challenge I've personally found with doing this work is, I'm not quite sure why this makes me want to start crying, but anyway, feeling like I'm not doing enough, like feeling constantly like, wow, we're not even close to solving for reconciliation. Like we're falling so short in terms of where things could be or should be, or like reflecting back on the Winds of Change document from like 2004 and rereading that and being like, a lot of the things that are being flagged that were being flagged as social concerns or social needs in this valley, you know, on this territory are still, and it's like, wow, that's 20 years. Like, why are people still living in such poverty? It's like, I've gotten so much richer just like based on my land values assessment. I haven't really had to do anything. Like, it's such a crazy disparity to be living in. And the challenge of, get together, the challenge of like sitting in this space with the Wellness Almanac and turning my attention to this kind of every day is feeling like, oh God, there's so many more things we need to be doing. But to be kind of doing this, like my realization and my right sizing of myself is, this is actually a content strategy. Like my piece of it, the Wellness Almanac, is a content strategy, which was always meant to be part of a bigger social strategy and a community engagement strategy. And those pieces were in play 20 years ago. There was a Winds of Change steering committee. There was an annual gathering. There was an event coordinator who was hired to do that. There was an awards ceremony. Like there were events that were planned to bring people together. And as some of those pieces fell away, the thing that remained was the Wellness Almanac. But it's actually just a content strategy, you know? And I think it's been helpful for me to kind of like check myself and right size myself and be like, okay, that was your piece of it. And there are some other pieces that we really need as a bigger community to put into play. Like, where's the social piece? Have I taken up all the time that Paula's actually, like, all the slack that was there? So what I wanted to share was two things. We conducted a survey. We put out a survey to kind of check in with the community in terms of, look, where are people at in terms of their own resilience? Where do people think things are at in terms of reconciliation? And what kind of things would people like to see done in the community, kind of like post the Wellness Almanac? I can make the results of that survey available to you guys. I won't walk through it all here now, but it was really helpful to see like people kind of were scaling themselves. Like on average, people were sort of like 7 out of 10 personal resilience. My theory, my hypothesis was like, if people are struggling in their own personal resilience, it's going to decrease their capacity to engage in reconciliation or something that they might be able to kind of push aside and be like, well, that's kind of the other side of the tracks. I've got these things to worry about. But that actually wasn't coming out. Like we had 81 people respond from like a real variety of folk, including a bunch of people who'd never even heard of the Wellness Almanac, thanks to Lillooet and SRD pushing it out on their social channels. And the level of passion and commitment for community and reconciliation was really solid. It was really solid. People want to engage and they want to know how to. In terms of personal resilience, one of the things that really intrigued me was that people are resourcing themselves. Like their biggest source of kind of resourcing for resilience is time in nature, friends, pets, and going to the gym and yoga, in terms of the ones that kind of like, and I was like, wow, this is really us doing it ourselves. Like there's no kind of like Whistler Community Services that's like really taking the lead on things. There isn't any one body that we can see people are being like, this is a killer resource for us. It's like people are resourcing themselves on their own, like, and if you don't have friends or if you don't have a pet, like I kind of looked at that and I'm like, wow, there's a vulnerability here that we want to be really aware of. Because what I look at in the world outside, it's like, that's where sort of predatory interests and like misinformation, disaster, like folk come in and they're like, they will prey on that. Like we, as a community, I think we want to find ways to make ourselves more robust so people aren't vulnerable to those kind of things. The bigger concerns that people are facing that they kind of flagged is like what kind of affects their sense of resilience is number one was climate concerns. Number two was economic instability, and number three was sort of mental health for themselves or their loved ones. So it's really fascinating for me to see like these are things that affect all of us, like we're so all in it together. And that was kind of the founding ethos from the Winds of Change Steering Committee, was they were kind of like, we like to think that this is a problem of the other. This is just, you know, those folk have a drinking issue or those folk have it. It's like that beautiful work of the people coming together at that table was to be like, no, this is all of us, you know, like we all share these common goals. We all are raising families here and we're all kind of like depending on each other for our future. And we're seeing that in the kind of survey responses, like in terms of the things that are worrying people. It's like none of us can escape climate change. None of us are immune from the economic instability that's playing out. You know, none of us are like our mental health is kind of connected to the health of the land and the health of each other, right? And so what do we do about that? How do we have some of those conversations? We asked people like, what kind of things would you like to see? And what was super interesting was the number of people who were like, community gathering places. Like sometimes they would articulate that as a pool, but if you sort of looked at what people were talking about, places to gather as community was the number one thing that people were saying like they're looking for, which was really heartening to me because that's kind of my bias, right? I'm like, oh, community is the medicine. Community is what makes us resilient. But to hear sort of people from all over the place saying, yeah, this is what we need. This is what we're looking for. And I think like we felt it through COVID and we're having to almost like rebuild it in such an active way. I put out a whole bunch of different ideas of like, what could we spend money on? You know, do you think, well, the first question was, do you feel that your local governments, the regional district, the village of Pemberton, Lillooet Nation should be investing in wellness, resilience, and reconciliation? And overwhelmingly, people were like, yes. Yes, this is something, because I've wondered about that, you know, like when you apply under the PDIF and when I sit and hear about the like really essential work that's going on, like with PAWS and the chamber and running the visitor info center, all that stuff, it's like, well, this is sort of like, it doesn't really fit into arts and culture. It doesn't really fit into economic development. Like, where does this sort of fit? But to hear so many people come back and be like, this is actually what local government should be doing. Like, this is kind of the key metric for how we're doing is people's wellness and our resilience as a community. So what I wanted to sort of plant as a seed here is, I know there's so much need for the money. I know there's so much need and demand for the money that you are stewarding and making available to community. But there is support in the community for it to go towards wellness, resilience, and reconciliation. There's sort of 2 or 3 survey responses that offered caveats on that. Were like, don't fund things that are social, like a nonprofit or a NGO can fund, like don't double up there kind of thing. And please make sure it's kind of shared, like one entity isn't kind of like covering somebody else, was kind of one of the concerns, which is where I think the Wellness Almanac has been like a good path in that it has been like 3 partners from the very beginning and moving forward. But what I did want to ask is, can you find a way to keep some money available as a fund that community members could access to support like pop-up initiatives that move reconciliation or wellness forward? People come up with these great little ideas, and then if there's nowhere for them to go with that or to find money, it just falls away. You know, like our Trails Associations are doing absolutely phenomenal work, building relationships with Lillooet Nation Land and Resources, and really trying to move that dialogue in a very constructive way. But they're doing it off the sides of their desks as volunteers or as executive directors who are already doing, you know, so much. Like if there's funding for them to be like, hey, we want to do this sign initiative, or we want to make sure that all our signs get translated into Ukumich as well, or that there's, say, for example, there's like QR codes. So if you're out bike riding, you could actually listen to the language and hear how to pronounce the name. So you're not kind of making fun of it because you feel insecure. Like, I don't know, I can think of 100 amazing things that community organizations are doing or could do if there was a space for them to go and say, hey, we know there's this kind of like Winds of Change or Nukuntwal fund that we could apply to. And maybe it's Spelkunft and maybe it's kind of coming down from the community forest. But one of the things that came up in the survey when it was like, which organizations in this community, or what is helping you move reconciliation or engage in reconciliation for yourselves, a lot of the community groups were like held up. The Pemberton Chamber, Orca and PVTA, Signal Hill and PSS, like our local schools are doing an incredible job there and doing things that are very community oriented. Like I was at the Signal Hill Pit Cook, which is like such a phenomenal and beautiful experience. Like they apply for the PAC apply for funding elsewhere, but like we also applied for different funding. It's harder and harder to get funding. So if our community can say, this is a priority, we're going to invest in this. And if community groups looking for ways to contribute to it, I think it could be incredibly powerful. And also because folk that find the topic intimidating, if it's coming from like their tribe within the community, it doesn't feel quite so much like a government is coming down and telling you what to do. So I think the idea of being able to fund these initiatives like through the people, like burbling up grassroots, could be super powerful. Let me just take a quick look. I think this is all that I had to say. The final, two pieces. I've been asked if I could get quotes on what it might look like to kind of retire the Wellness Almanac into some kind of like static website. And I approached a couple of web developers and designers, and I was like, oh, it's 4,000 posts, and we would just want to kind of like work a way to kind of index it well. And they were just like, I'm busy for the next 10 years. So I couldn't even get a quote to find out how much it would be, because I think the scale of it is too vast. And I thought about it a little bit. And I was like, I think potentially it's worth just like archiving it and leaving it as it is. And then ideally, if Nukuntwal like decides to move forward with something that was like more of a statement about where we are as communities, it could be its own separate thing, and we can just sort of leave those stories there as an existing archive of things that have been shared. In the survey, I asked like if we were retiring stuff as a content that you would want to have like remain there, and it was kind of all over the shop for things that had like resonated for different people. So there wasn't really clear direction on that. It felt like the best idea would be just to be like, it can sort of, it's like $100 a year or something. I'd be quite happy to just underwrite that. The final piece that I wanted to share for, I'm open to questions if you have any, is that I learned in the last month that the Ukumich word for thank you, Kukstum Cow, actually translates literally as you saved me. Isn't that the coolest thing? I just think there's something so there's something so wise and grounded in the idea that thank you means like we are so interdependent on each other. It doesn't mean just sort of like, hey, thanks, like appreciate it. It kind of means like my life and your life depend on each other. And so when you do something for me, that's really meaningful. So I wanted to say thank you for the funding and the support for working on this over the last 12 years. It's been really extremely meaningful. And a real privilege, like it's been a real privilege as sort of a content person to have been like tasked with this topic that I didn't really know very much about, and to have had the opportunity to engage with it every day for like a big chunk of my life. Like it's definitely changed. It's changed and shaped me personally. So I'm really grateful for it. So you saved me, thank you. And I'm hopeful that I can sort of step away from this role and this kind of like particular way of it being done and open up space for maybe it to take another to take another life that maybe is a little bit more organized, like has a bit more buy-in, is a bit more structured, because I think it's important, and like we need each other, and it would be good to have an entity that some kind of an entity or a table that has a resource, has a budget, has a bit of a mission, and is sort of empowered to yeah, pour some energy into it. Yeah.
I just want to say, Lisa, thank you so much. It's been a difficult work over the years, but rewarding in a lot of ways. And I sat on that initial Winds of Change, you know, when it first started many years ago, and to see it still have some life form is amazing. And the only thing that I can think of is on a practical level is, you know, the new powwow center that's gone out on the nation itself is very hopeful. And that was driven through the chamber and the there was a lot of partners involved in that, but I think that is a really good space to hold some inter-community meetings and fun and potlatches and if, you know, and so on along with that. So what you're really saying is you need more people sitting at the table to drive forward this, right? So, yeah, but thank you for all the work you've done and I'd love it if you continued on because I think every little bit helps, right? Every little bit helps. But.
Thank you.
And I will say, thank you since becoming part of this community. I've learned a lot about what the Wellness Almanac does. And I just also want to, thank you for being willing to have the uncomfortable conversations because I think that's if we are going to move forward with reconciliation, we need to be willing to be uncomfortable because that's where the change happens. And so for you to sit in that space, thank you very much for doing that and for everything you've done with the community. And it's very much my hope that we will continue to build on the work that has been done. Okay. Moving on to item 6, consent agenda.
I'll move that.
And then do we have a seconder? Seconded. Questions, comments? Any votes? Motion passes. Item 6.1 approval and sorry. All of that's done. Okay. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay, moving on to item 8, staff reports. So we're starting with the SLRD CAO verbal updates.
I do actually have one. So this is in relation to previous PDIF funding for CSGI Community Services. They received one-time funding in 2021 to provide lunch and learn program for Pemberton seniors. They received $11,400+ for the program. They were, however, unable to use all of those funds in the first year, so they came back and through a previous CAO verbal update, they did get another extension. That was in February 2023. So unfortunately, we're in a bit of a similar situation in the fact that due to staff shortages, etc., they're short about 4 lunch and learns. They have funds for that. So they would just like to see if they could get one more extension to cover them for 2024 so that they could complete those last 4 events. And so I'm just thought that I would ask the committee. I do have a draft resolution if they're interested, and that would be that the CSGI Community Service Society be granted an extension to their PDIF funding term from January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024. A 1-year extension with staff to communicate the approval to the organization in writing.
I'll move that.
Any questions, comments? Any opposed? Motion passes.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and then do motion to receive the report? You need to do that?
No, it's really the resolution.
Okay, and then Village of Pemberton CO, update, and we have Thomas here in place of Ms. Grace.
That's correct. I don't have an update today.
Okay, thank you. And then the next item is information report from the Recreation Services for the Q3 financials. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for having me. So this is an unaudited update for Q3 financials. As you're aware, that should be about 75% of what was budgeted for 2023. We're tracking on schedule. Programming and fitness revenue are ahead of schedule by about 66% at the end of Q3. And I think that you can see that there are some expenses that are potentially tracking above at Q3 as well. And that's based on increase in services, increase in programming, which has resulted in an increase requirement for staffing. But for the most part, we're looking very strong recovery, and we're ahead of budget for much of that. We were pretty pleased with the fact that we're forecasting above normal operation levels, and that those will be continued on for 2024. I think the things to highlight are that we were ahead of revenue. Revenue was ahead of for what we were forecasting for Q3. Adult program revenue was at 137% based on what we had predicted. Children's program revenue was at 98% at Q3, and children's camp revenue is at 153%. And then fitness center revenue is at 113% of what we had predicted. And what is nice to see is that we were only 91% over with what we were expecting for expenses for staffing revenue. And then everything else is basically on track, and where you can see some of the numbers are potentially overspent. A lot of that was due to just staffing, maybe potentially not allocating expenses in the right area. So we've spent a lot of time for what we're hopefully forecasting for 2024 and reallocating where we're putting expenses, so that they are more matched to what is actually happening in those revenue lines and the expense lines. But we were super pleased with where we were at the end of Q3. We're still looking at Q4 and year end for 2023, but we do anticipate operating at much higher levels for 2024 than we had anticipated previously, and we're pretty excited about where we are finishing. So, I mean, half of our challenge in not spending is the fact that our staff doesn't have the time to spend it. So if there are any questions, I am open to those. So fire away.
Questions, comments?
Right. This is kind of a weird question, but at our last meeting in last year, just at the end of the year, you mentioned that the Canada Day celebration might be moving to the barn on a continual basis. I'm just wondering what the reasoning is behind that. And my comment is that I was at the Canada Day celebration last year, of course, at the barn, and it was good. Don't get me wrong. I thought it had lots of energy and it was great. There were lots of kids enjoying themselves. The parade was great and everything. But I feel as a community member and so on, that the community center is just so much better place for the event itself, the celebration, and the open field there and the grassy area and outside and so on. So I'm just wondering if that's what Yeah.
Yeah, so from an operational perspective, we're still in the planning stages. We definitely have more construction concerns around the facility that will lead us to having the event at the barn, I believe, moving forward this year. However, I'm happy to take your concerns and your comments into consideration moving forward. Certainly.
Right.
So
And
we're
that's-
still in the planning stage, obviously.
So that's because of the moving the children's landscape area, right?
There's multiple things happening potentially this year. So there's definitely going to be some reconstruction of the Great Lawn required due to some construction concerns that have caused some damage to the Great Lawn. So that will impede us throwing events on the Great Lawn for a portion of the year moving forward, depending on what our regrowth season looks like. As well, should we be able to move forward with the accessibility project that we have had the library receive monies to support for the last 2 years, we will potentially have some significant construction at the east side of the south side entrance of the facility, which will have that whole front side of the facility under construction in order to put an accessible ramp in. So we're definitely in the process of planning projects at the moment and working with other departments to see what all of that might look like. And some of the decisions we can't make until spring. And when we know, growing grass is definitely weather dependent. So if it's an early spring, we can get an early jump on things. And if it's going to be a heavy construction season around the facility, then we'll have to make decisions from an operational perspective based on all of those. So we did like the barn. It's a fantastic facility to highlight for the community. It is a community gathering place that we would like to highlight using as a community gathering place. We did try to offer other events in that space this year to gather our community with the movie nights and things like that. But we do definitely agree that the community center and the Great Lawn are a fantastic gathering space as well. And how we use those moving forward will be something that we take into serious consideration from a planning perspective.
Well, thank you for all the work that you do there. It's a busy facility. And
yes.
thank you. And it's a great space.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, I think we're outgrowing it, our community, but we're doing, I can see that you're doing the best that you can.
Yeah, I mean,
The space you have, right?
Yeah.
And it's well used.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Christine.
No, thank you. I mean, I can highlight that we had just with putting counters in for 9 months of the year, that we had over 120,000 visits to the facility.
Wow.
We increased rental hours by 6,000 hours last year. So we had over 14,000 hours of rentals alone in the facility. We sold over 3,000 memberships to access the fitness facility last year, which averaged 125 visits a day to the fitness center alone. So on average, we see a minimum of about 125 people coming in just to use the fitness facility on a daily basis. And we had well over 10,000 unique registrations for children's programs and fitness programs alone last year. All of those are significant increases to what was seen pre-COVID. So those are more stats to come with future updates. So, but those are just a couple of high level numbers that I've been able to pull so far.
Yeah, it's
From
impressive.
2023. So yeah, it's all due to previous great work done and what we are trying to do moving forward. So yeah. Pretty exciting stuff. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Forgot my glasses today, so Suzanne?
Yeah, just a question about the 2022 surplus. I see that the actuals aren't entered in there. Is it similar to budget? Do you have 2022 audited numbers?
It would be,
I'll defer to acting CAO, Finance Manager Sikora.
yeah, it would be similar to budget. Is your question about 2022 or 2023? As there might be a timing impact.
The 2022 surplus revenue that we have budgeted, it's just not entered as the actuals, so I just wasn't sure if you had 2022 results yet.
Yeah, I hadn't included those here, but I could provide them at our next meeting, or after this one. That is intended to be part of the 2024 budget presentation as well for comparison.
Great, thanks.
Any
That's all for me.
Thank you.
questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I can get a motion to receive report. Sorry. Director Mack, thank you, and then seconded by Director Bennett. Any questions, comments, any opposed? Motion carries. What I was supposed to say.
You're doing great.
Okay, and then moving on, we have the information report for the PDIF.
Yeah, so just a base Bronco project and program coordinator. So just an overview for the PDIF program. Part of the agreement is they need to submit a progress report by November 15th of every year. And anyone over $12,000 was the update to the policy. We'll do a presentation, which were the delegations today. So the remainder of the reports were under that amount. And it's just the written report within the information report for each organization. Let me know if you have any questions about any of their reports.
Any questions? Thank you very much. And can I have a motion to repeat? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Kennett. Questions, comments, any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And then item 8.5, we have the information report for the 2024 draft budget notes for PVUS.
Oh, mute.
Sorry, you cut out for me. Are we ready to do the budgets? Is that the next item?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I have the first draft of the PVUS service budgets for you here. The beginning just discusses the BC assessment changes, and overall the Village of Pemberton and electoral area C have increased 8.5% in assessments. Area C at 9.53 and Village Pemberton at 7.68. This is with the 2024 completed roll. And this roll isn't what is taxed on. So the constituents are taxed on the revised roll, which comes out in March. But this is just the roll that we use for budgeting because of timing issues. And overall, with the requisition changes comparative to 2023, it is a 7.8% increase so far. And that's $142,000 additional requisition. The biggest requisition increase was for the permanent refuse grounds, and I'll get to the reasons why that is. And the second largest was for the permanent library, and the following would be permanent museum. The 2023 forecasted figures are still subject to change and will most likely change. We haven't finalized things like interest revenue, and we're still finalizing a lot of the expenses. We haven't received some December invoicing yet. And so additional delegations will be brought to the February PVUS meeting to speak to their budgets. And these are the local service representatives. So for example, the library and the museum will come as well. We'll try to get the Legion to come to speak to the cemetery. And I believe that's it. So I'll just go into some more details in the budget. And I'll start with the Permanent Fire Rescue Service. So far, this is just budgeted at the November CPI increase. The fire committee still has to review this service, so it may change next time it's presented. And the Permanent Search and Rescue, they requested a slight decrease in their requisition, and they spoke to the PVUS committee during the delegations. For permanent refuse, this is the largest increase, and it's mainly due to contracted services and the GFL servicing costs and tipping fees. So all of these relay back to the service, and they're gone over budget by an estimated $95,000. So there is a deficit carrying forward into 2024 of $91,000. And we're looking at potential options, but there is not a lot of options for this service, unfortunately. The staff time component has decreased over budget from last year, but it's still a 30% increase over the forecasted actual. And nothing else of note that I wanted to bring up concerning the refuse site, but I'll leave it open for questions for now for the permanent refuse budget, if there is any.
Director Mess.
So is there any, is there any way we can control, like if we put a budget forward and contractors, GFL, they go over by 90-some odd $1,000. What can we do about that? I mean, so, you know, like, so what happens this year if they do the same thing, and then next year, there has to be some sort of way we can control this. If they sign on at the beginning of a budget year and say, we're gonna provide the service for X number of dollars, then they should come within, you know, a certain percentage of what they've said they're gonna do. Like, I mean, because how do we control that? We just continue raising people's taxes? That doesn't work for me.
So unfortunately, it's all based on estimates. There is no contract to say this is what you have to stick at, just like for cost. So it's how many times they had to come to dump, how many times what the tipping fee changes were for where they're actually dumping the refuse. So it's all out of our control, basically. And so what we receive is the charges that they like there's no control for us to say you can only charge this much. It's what the service requires.
So what happens then when their tipping fees go up at their end, when they're dumping our garbage somewhere, then when those tipping fees go up, they just pass that back to us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct. I believe they tip it at Cache Creek. I'm not sure where they bring it to, but the tipping fees, wherever they tip it at, come to the SLRD, yeah, for this service.
Yeah, that's just, for me, that doesn't work. I mean, because we have no control over it. We have no idea from year to year how much this is actually going to cost.
And it was a lot more than what we estimated it to be, obviously. So, you know, there's options of we have our own trucking, you know, I don't know, there seems to be a little bit of a monopoly with that kind of service. So, yeah, there's limited, yeah.
Can I ask just a clarifying question? Do we have an idea? I mean, if it went over budget by 95,000, I mean, do we know if that's because, like, what portion of that was because we just required more services than we thought, or was it, you know, mostly just changes in tipping fees? Because with that information, then that might also help us manage that better. Because if it was, you know, 90,000 of the 95,000 was just the fact that we had to have more garbage hauled, then we know that it just knows, we know that for budgeting purposes, we need to estimate that we're gonna be producing a lot more garbage than we thought we were.
Well, this is the first year of this service as is, so it was a guesstimate for the budget. Because we only had the transfer station open in November 2022. So 2023 was the first year of the full service from GFL. So it was an estimate, and we're running from this now, and it'll be estimated from this current full year going forward. But they did let us know that the rates were increasing. They let us know that, the tipping fees were increasing where they were dumping it, but it was just still an estimate at that time as to what the full year would look like, how many times they'd have to come in and service. So yeah, it's all an estimate for 2023's budget.
So if I, just a follow-up question there is, so would we, now that we have numbers from this past year, would you expect that we could, I know, like, I recognize it's always going to be, it sounds like it's always going to be somewhat of an estimate, but would we expect next year that we'd have a closer estimate of what it's actually going to cost, so that we don't end up in situations where we're, running $95,000 over budget?
Yeah, for sure. But since we have a full year now, the budget is going to be based on this full year.
So you did make the comment about our own trucking. And I had actually brought this up with Kelvin Jameson a few years ago when Lillooet bought their first compactor truck. I think they have 2 now. So maybe they'd like to get into the business of hauling all of our garbage in this particular area, like say from Darcy down, and it might be a business opportunity for them. And then we wouldn't have to rely on GFL, because what we've done is we've gone from Carney's to GFL, and they all seem to operate in the same mode. It's how much money they can take out of your pocket.
We have had a bit of a conversation, obviously with the UES department on whether there are other options. So they are investigating. Unfortunately, Carney's turned into GFL because they were bought out. They are a monopoly in this area. The other thing to note as well is that just the difference between, say, a landfill and a transfer station. Landfill could have a little bit more regulated costs, whereas the transfer station that we're seeing, while it's, all above ground and it doesn't have any environmental impacts and issues, we are subject to those fluctuating costs. And so I think that's a good thing to note, just as I know it doesn't necessarily affect this table, but when we are talking about other things at the SLRD board table with regard to landfills, et cetera. But we did have a brief conversation to see if we could explore something else, whether or not Lillooet would be capable with what they have from their trucking to manage ours as well.
No, so what I'm saying, if they put it into a business case, maybe they'd buy 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more trucks and make it profitable for them, but also, they'd be part of the program because they're hauling their garbage too, right?
We'd still be subject to their pricing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I understand
What if
that.
there was some
But
competition?
and maybe we'd be keeping the money local instead of shipping it out, right?
I don't think that anything that we would be able to do would be able to inform this budget cycle.
Yeah.
Obviously, it would take a
No.
little bit more time.
For sure, for
Maybe
sure.
there's some suggestions or options through the next budget cycle that staff could bring forward to see if there is an option, have those conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you very much. And then if that is it, then I'll look for a motion to receive.
Did you still, I think,
Oh,
still some more?
Oh,
this
sorry.
was just the transfer station.
Apologies.
Sorry. So yeah, the next budget would be the permanent TV and radio, and that shows as 0 acquisition and no service. There is a little bit of reserve left, so I've transferred it all into 2024 in case some additional legal expenses are required. So that's all that's in there right now. This service has been stopped basically due to the society being in the process of dissolving. I've spoken to the old president of the society, and they're in the process of dissolving, and they haven't completed an asset listing. I know this was brought to the PVUS committee previously, and basically they stated that it's all scrap metal for what the assets are. So it's more of a, we will wait and see what happens with this service, but I don't anticipate any further expenses. As far as I know, the Crown land tenures will just revert back to the Crown. And that's all that I have on that service for now. And I haven't received any complaints that the service isn't running. Any questions on the permanent TV service? All right. And then there's a 2100 service permanent district community fund, which is now completely closed. The remaining miscellaneous in the remaining expenses have been allocated to the visitor center summer staff. And so that will not be coming forward into 2024. So instead we have the PDIF funds, we have the 2108 cost center for the recreation PDIF fund, and then 2109 for the economic development PDIF fund. And we have budgeted at the maximum requisition, sorry, not the maximum, at the same requisition as last year. So there is an option to increase these requisitions just slightly because of the new assessments. So for the PDIF recreation, it's only a $6,000 increase. So it's just very minor so far. And the economic development has about $4,000 available to increase. So not much change from the 2023 requisition available. But like stated, they are flat to last year for taxation. Any questions on the PDIF requisitions? All right, I'll just move to the Permanent Museum. So this is as per the request from the Permanent Museum. They requested, sorry, I'll make it to the right spot, $217,885. This is the same amount they requested last year as well, but it was reduced last year to $189,992. So they are coming to discuss their budget in February, and potentially then we can discuss if the committee is happy with their request. And the next budget is the Pemberton Library, and they have requested $406,609. And they will as well be coming to the February PVUS meeting to discuss their budgets. And then we have the permanent cemetery function. I didn't receive a budget from the Legion for the Pemberton cemetery function, so I kept it as per what the last few years were at, which is $2,500. And I'm hoping that they can provide some documents and potentially come to speak to their budget. And the final budget is the Permanent Valley Rec Trail Service. And this is also a flat taxation to last year. There's carry forward projects, and so there was a surplus carry forward of 18,378. There are transfers to capital reserve and transfers to surplus reserve included in the 2024 budget for a total of 9,466 transferred to reserve. Any questions on the Permanent Valley Trails budget?
Sorry, I have one question. Will PVTA be coming to discuss their ask as well?
I think they have been requested. I will double check. I'm not 100% positive they are coming. I guess if there's no further questions, that's the end of this presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now can I have a motion to receive the report? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Kennett. Any questions, comments, any opposed? Motion carries. And then any late business arising? And record notice of motion, or do we just need to resume?
Say no directors.
Oh, no directors notice motion, and then can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Director Mack and seconded by Director Kennett. Motion carried.